Most people believe that the difference between a smart decision and a foolish one is knowledge. That mistakes happen only when we don't have enough information or when emotions cloud our judgment. But the uncomfortable truth is this: even the most intelligent, educated, and experienced people routinely make decisions that are biased, irrational, and deeply flawed. Not because they are careless, but because their minds are designed to do so. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman made a breakthrough discovery. We do not think the way we think we think. We don't make decisions by carefully analyzing choices. Instead, we react fast, emotionally, intuitively, and subconsciously. And only later do we construct a logical explanation to justify what our feelings already decided. The mind is not a logic machine. It is a storyteller. And that story often fools even the smartest among us. Every day we make decisions: what to buy, who to trust, where to invest, whether to say yes or no in a conversation. And in each decision, we believe we are being rational, thoughtful, and in control. Yet psychology tells a different story. We don't simply choose, we are influenced, not by data alone, but by how data feels, not by facts, but by the way facts are framed. Our brain constantly takes mental shortcuts, making quick judgments to save time, energy, and effort. And while this helps us survive in a fast world, it blinds us to how easily our choices can be nudged, shaped, even manipulated. Kahneman called these two mental systems System 1 and System 2. One feels, one thinks, one protects us, the other guides us, but only one truly leads, and it's not the one we assume. System 1. The fast brain. There is a part of your mind that reacts before you even understand what is happening. It allows you to sense danger before you see it, feel trust before you can explain it, and make snap judgments that feel right, even when they turn out completely wrong. Kahneman called this system 1. Fast, emotional, automatic, and deeply intuitive. It never sleeps, never stops, and never waits for permission. It works silently, forming first impressions, assumptions, and beliefs, long before your logical mind ever gets involved. System 1 is not interested in accuracy. It is interested in certainty. It looks for patterns, stories, and emotional meaning, not truth. When you instantly like someone without knowing why, when you feel uneasy about a decision but can't explain it, when you quickly trust a confident speaker even without proof, that is System 1 at work. It makes decisions not based on evidence, but based on how things feel. It uses shortcuts, what psychology calls heuristics. If something feels familiar, it must be safe. If many people believe it, it must be true. If it feels urgent, it must be important. If it is presented in a strong, confident, emotionally charged way, it must be correct. These shortcuts are efficient, but dangerously unreliable. And here's the paradox. System 1 is often right. It helps us survive, connect, and respond quickly in a complex world, but it also makes us vulnerable to persuasion, framing, bias, and even manipulation, because when something feels true, we rarely stop to ask if it is true. The fast brain doesn't analyze. It assumes. It doesn't debate. It declares. And the more certain it feels, the more confident we become, even when we're completely wrong. This fast brain is instinctive, emotional, powerful, but it has one weakness. It cannot see its own mistakes. It believes its first impression is the only impression, and that is where the second system must step in. System 2, the slow brain. If System 1 is the instinctive storyteller, System 2 is the quiet analyst. It is slow, deliberate, logical, and effortful. It is the part of the brain that engages when we calculate, analyze, question, reflect, and think deeply before making a decision. It doesn't jump to conclusions. It weighs options. It challenges assumptions. It looks for truth, not comfort. But there's a catch. System 2 is lazy. It doesn't want to activate unless absolutely necessary because deep thinking requires energy. Kahneman often joked that System 2 is like a tired judge. It prefers to agree with whatever System 1 has already decided, unless something truly forces it to intervene. It takes more effort to reason than to react, and the brain is built to conserve effort. That's why we are quick to form opinions, but slow to revise them. We feel certain before we understand. We decide before we reflect. Think about everyday decisions. You see a headline, you believe it before checking the facts. You hear someone speak with confidence. You trust them before investigating. You feel a spark of excitement about an idea. And then you use logic to justify that feeling. System 1 comes first. System 2 simply rationalizes. That's why Kahneman said, "We don't choose between intuition and reason. We choose whether to question our intuition." Most of the time, we don't. System 2 is not our natural default. System 1 is. We don't walk around analyzing every thought that crosses our mind. We couldn't handle it. So we delegate almost all thinking to intuition, and only when something feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, or risky does System 2 take over. But here is the crucial insight. System 2 does not erase System 1. It explains it. It doesn't fix mistakes. It justifies them. It doesn't always reveal truth. It protects comfort. That is why being intelligent is not enough to make good decisions. Intelligence helps you justify what you already want to believe. The smarter you are, the better you are at defending your biases. And this leads to a fascinating question. If intelligence doesn't protect us from bad decisions, what does? The answer lies in understanding how our mind deceives itself, even when it thinks it's being rational. Why smart people make bad decisions? We often assume that intelligence protects us from poor judgment, that the more educated, experienced, or successful a person becomes, the less likely they are to be misled by emotion, bias, or illusion. But Kahneman made an unsettling discovery. Smart people are not less vulnerable to mental mistakes. In many cases, they are more vulnerable. The reason is simple. Intelligence does not eliminate bias, it empowers it. Highly intelligent people are excellent at constructing logical explanations. But they often use that ability not to challenge their beliefs, but to defend them. When they feel certain, they don't question the feeling. They reinforce it with evidence, logic, and elegant arguments. They are not more rational. They are simply more articulate in justifying their intuition. This leads to what Kahneman called the illusion of understanding. We feel that we know why we made a decision. We believe we thought it through. We are confident in our reasoning. But if we look closely, we discover that the decision was already made, emotionally before logic ever arrived. Logic was simply invited to defend it. Consider leaders, investors, negotiators, people trained to think strategically. They are often extremely confident in their judgment. Yet history shows that the biggest corporate losses, failed negotiations, and disastrous investments were not made by uninformed people. They were made by experts, people who believed deeply in their own certainty. Overconfidence is one of the most dangerous mental biases. It doesn't just distort our decisions. It blinds us to the fact that we might be wrong. It gives us the illusion of clarity, even when we are reasoning in fog. But here's the real danger. We don't recognize overconfidence while it's happening. We feel sure, and confidence feels like truth, until reality proves otherwise. When a decision feels emotionally right, we don't look for opposing evidence. We look for supportive evidence. We don't explore other possibilities. We defend the one we already like. It's not a lack of thinking. It's a lack of questioning. So, if confidence does not equal accuracy, and intelligence does not equal rationality, Then how do we uncover clarity? The answer begins in the hidden forces that shape our decisions, silently, invisibly, and constantly, without our permission. The hidden biases that control our choices. We like to believe our decisions are shaped by logic, experience, and knowledge, but psychology says otherwise. Many of the choices we make are not based on truth, but on bias, invisible patterns in our thinking that affect how we interpret reality. These mental shortcuts are fast and useful, yet they quietly distort our judgment, often without us knowing. Kahneman called them cognitive biases, systemic errors in thinking that influence how we see problems, people, risks, and opportunities. One of the most powerful is confirmation bias. When we have an opinion, we don't objectively test it. Instead, we look for information that supports it. We search for validation, not truth. Opposing evidence feels threatening, so we ignore it, downplay it, or simply don't notice it. This is why arguments rarely change minds, because most people are not listening to learn, but listening to defend what they already believe. Then there is authority bias. We trust confidence more than accuracy. When someone speaks firmly, dresses correctly, or appears successful, we believe them more, even in the absence of proof. System 1 does not analyze qualifications, it reads signals. It confuses confidence with competence. And confidence, especially when paired with emotional storytelling, can be extremely persuasive. Another powerful bias is loss aversion. We feel the pain of losing far more intensely than the pleasure of winning. The fear of loss shapes our behavior more than the pursuit of gain. This is why people stay in failing jobs, relationships, and investments, because leaving feels like losing, even when staying is worse. Loss aversion locks us into comfort, even when comfort is no longer safe. But perhaps the most dangerous bias is the illusion of certainty, the belief that we understand more than we actually do. It hides behind confidence, it disguises itself as clarity, and it convinces us not to question, not to analyze, not to slow down, just when we need it the most. Biases are not errors in logic. They are default settings of the human mind. They protect us from overthinking, but also prevent us from seeing clearly. So the question becomes, if our mind constantly simplifies, filters, and reshapes reality, how can we ever make better decisions? The answer lies not in deleting bias, but in managing it. And that begins with the ability to pause, reflect, and engage the slow brain. How to think better. Training your decision mind. Kahneman believed something liberating. We cannot stop our biases, but we can learn to see them before they take over. We cannot turn off System 1, the fast emotional brain, but we can teach System 2 to step in at the right moment. The goal is not to think slowly all the time. That would paralyze us. The goal is to recognize the moments in life when our intuition is most likely to deceive us, and to slow down just long enough to think clearly. So, how do we trigger System 2 before making an important decision? By asking better questions. Questions interrupt automatic thinking. They force the brain to pause, reflect, and consider alternatives. Kahneman often used a method called the pre-mortem. Instead of asking, "Why will this idea succeed?" ask, "In what ways could this fail?" This simple shift activates the analytical mind. It moves us from certainty to curiosity, from confidence to clarity. We cannot trust every feeling, but we can learn to recognize when a feeling should not be trusted, when we are overly confident, emotionally attached to an outcome, chasing approval, or ignoring contradictions. In those moments, slowing down becomes a strategy, not a weakness. Thinking better is not about intelligence, it is about awareness. It is the willingness to delay judgment long enough to consider what might be missing. It is understanding that clarity rarely lives in the first answer, but in the second and third question. As Kahneman said, nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. System 1 makes everything feel urgent. System 2 helps us see what truly matters. In the end, better thinking does not mean eliminating emotion. It means aligning emotion with reason. It means letting intuition guide, but not letting it dominate. It means making choices, not reactions. Yet there is one more uncomfortable truth. Biases do not only live in our own minds, they live in the world around us, in the messages we hear, the products we buy, the leaders we trust, and the stories we believe. And some people know exactly how to use them. How influence uses your mind against you. By now, we've learned that our mind relies heavily on shortcuts, patterns, emotional signals, familiar stories, and intuitive certainty. These shortcuts help us navigate the world quickly, but they also make us remarkably easy to influence. The most successful communicators, leaders, marketers, negotiators, even content creators, don't persuade by providing more information or stronger arguments. They persuade by speaking directly to the fast brain. System 1. They don't try to convince your logic. They guide your intuition. Influence often begins before logic ever enters the room. When a message feels urgent, important, familiar, or emotionally rewarding, our brain begins accepting it as true before we have even evaluated it. Advertisers don't try to prove why a product is useful. They make it feel desirable, trusted, or socially validated. They use authority bias by adding expert-looking figures, loss aversion by presenting limited-time offers, and social proof with phrases like bestseller, trending, or trusted by millions. They are not providing facts. They are shaping feelings. Politicians do the same. They craft statements not for accuracy, but for certainty. They understand that confidence is more persuasive than complexity. People don't follow the smartest leader. They follow the one who appears the most certain, even when they're not. Because certainty feels safe. Even everyday interactions use psychological triggers. In negotiations, skilled persuaders don't push. They frame. They don't sell benefits. They highlight what you might lose if you walk away. They don't force agreement. They create emotional alignment. They influence not by argument, but by design. And the most fascinating part? We believe we are making independent choices, but our preferences are constantly being framed, primed, nudged, and guided, so subtly that we don't notice. We think we reject manipulation, yet we accept influence, because influence doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like clarity. Kahneman's work does not teach us how to outsmart others. It teaches us how to stop falling for illusions, especially the ones that feel true. True influence does not target logic, it targets perception, and perception is where decisions are truly made. In the end, Kahneman did not try to eliminate bias, emotion, or intuition. He believed they were essential to human behavior. Instead, he simply wanted us to see them. Because once you understand how the mind actually works, you stop being fooled by certainty, overwhelmed by information, or controlled by confidence. You start to notice the difference between what feels true and what is true. You begin to pause, not forever, just long enough, to think. And that is where influence begins. Not in speaking more, not in convincing harder, but in seeing clearer. In the next video, we go one step further, not just how we think, but why we believe what we want to believe, and how that belief is shaped, guided, and sometimes quietly engineered. Are you ready to look deeper into the psychology of persuasion, belief, and human behavior?